Hi friends! Welcome to another Sims 4 tutorial. So today I'm going to show you how to make your builds go from boring and kind of empty to cluttered and lived in. So I just created this very simple living room slash kitchen slash dining room build using just base game items, by the way. I can't promise it'll stay that way, but I thought that would just make things a little bit easier. And I thought we could just clutter this up together using different types of tricks and techniques, I guess, that I normally use. First things first, let's go over the basic things that we'll need before we get started. So we're going to start by turning on Move Objects, which is a cheat that allows you to basically place items anywhere. So to activate cheats, we're going to press Ctrl-Shift-C on our keyboards, and then in this little cheat code box, you're going to type bb.moveobjects on in your game, and that should do it. Sometimes for some players, I think you're going to have to turn on your cheats first though. So then you're just going to have to do testing cheats on, and then it says cheats are enabled, and then you can do move objects on. And then just click escape to get rid of the cheat code box. Next, we're going to press F5 on our keyboards, which doesn't visually change anything, but it actually allows for quarter tile placement, which is very helpful. So when you press G to turn on the grid, before I had F5 enabled, you can see that this chair snaps to half tiles on the grid. But when I press F5 and activate quarter tile placement, you can see that it snaps to quarter tiles, which is very useful. Then something we're going to use a lot of in this tutorial is alt placement, which is very easy to do. Just hold down alt on your keyboard and then grab whatever item you want to place. And as you can see, I can now hover without it snapping to the grid, and you can just place it freely off the grid that way. The same goes for rotating. So while pressing down alt on your keyboard, just snap the item down and then rotate it by pressing down your left mouse button and just rotating the item around. Then there's sizing things up and down, which you can do by using your right and left bracket keys on your keyboard. So just grab whatever item you want to size up. Say we want to size up this plant. We're just going to select it and then press either the left bracket key to make it smaller or the right one to size it up if you want a giant coffee table plant. And then last but not least, there is raising and lowering items as well, which you can do by pressing Control 9 to raise things or Control 0 to lower things. And then there are a couple of mods that I use on a regular basis. One of them being this red OMSP Shelf, which is a piece of custom content by pictureamoebae. I really hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly, but that's what it sounds like in my head. So basically this red OMSP Shelf allows you or helps you with placing clutter just a little bit more precisely. I'll show you how I use it exactly in a second, but you can just go to pictureamoebae's website and download it. I highly recommend just going through the downloading and installing instructions on the website, and then you should be fine. Then there's Better BuildBuy and Organize Debug, which allows you to very easily access the debug menu. We're actually not going to go into that in this tutorial because I feel like that would be an entirely separate tutorial. But if you want to use a lot of debug objects for your houses, I highly recommend downloading the Better BuildBuy tool by Twisted Mexi and turn on Organize Debug, which essentially just makes it so that when you turn on debug and live edit under content in your filters, it shows the debug and live edit items categorized under the proper categories in the menu, and you can find everything very easily in the catalog that way. But yeah, like I said, we won't be using a ton of debug in today's tutorial because it's not really necessary. It's a very helpful mod though, and the same goes for the tool mod, which is also by Twisted Mexi, and you can download it off of their website as well. We will be using the tool mod a little bit today, just for a couple of basic things. But again, I highly recommend just going to Twisted Mexi's website and really carefully read through the instructions on how to install these mods, because it can be a little tricky sometimes. So with all these basics in mind, I think I'm just going to start by slightly rearranging the furniture in a way where it doesn't look so static. There's nothing specifically wrong with this living room, but I feel like things could maybe just be a little bit more messy, lived in, There's just a little bit too much distance between the couches and this side table. So now that we have quarter tile placement on, we can very easily just, without alt placing really, just place everything a little bit more closer together so that the living room is a little bit more snuggly and just a little bit more cozy. I would also like to place this chair on a slight diagonal right here, maybe by this window. So let's just alt place that. I always really like placing chairs or items on a slight angle sometimes because it just makes it look a little bit more realistic. Sometimes I like to also rotate rugs ever so slightly when the room calls for it. You can see that it just looks a little bit more lived in that way, but for this particular room, it doesn't really need it. So I'm just gonna place it as is. And immediately this already just looks a little bit more cozy. I feel like we could use a few more bookcases actually. So I think I might just place this one over on this wall, and then I'm gonna copy it over and place one right next to it. And then we're gonna alt place it in a way where it looks like one taller bookcase. Now for this one specifically, the clutter looks a little bit repetitive, but we can fix that later. There is nothing wrong with the placement of this dining table. I feel like it sort of makes sense, but what if we placed it on a little bit of a diagonal? Especially with quarter tile placement on, we can really precisely place it without even needing to place it off the grid. That just makes it look a little bit more playful in my opinion. Also, the placement of this trash can is really bothersome to me, so thankfully again, we can now place that a little bit more precise. So we could just alt place it here against the wall in the corner so that it doesn't really obstruct this cabinet either, even though that's not functional. But you know, when we're thinking of realism, we would like for Sims to be able to reach those drawers under there. I would also like to rotate this coffee table plant a little bit so that it's on a slight angle. Maybe we want to move it to the side of the table a little bit more so there's more space. That already looks cute, I think, but the entire space just looks a little bit empty. So let's just sort of go through and see if we can fill up some empty spots with some extra furniture. Right off the bat, I can tell you that I like to fill up these like empty spaces behind couches sometimes by using a little plant in the corner. I feel like this one's always really nice. And I have a thing, I probably overdo it, but I usually always will alt place and like alt rotate my plans. I don't know why I do that. I also think it's just a habit at this point, but you know. And then a trick to add in a little bit more clutter or just add some more services for more clutter opportunities is using end tables behind couches. I think what would be really cute is, I know we just moved everything, but what if we moved everything slightly forward again and like into the room a little bit more? Like this. And then we have space for an extra surface behind the couch. So we could just grab this one maybe that matches the furniture that I'm already using, this base game one, and just place it behind the couch. You can see that it's slightly clipping, which I honestly don't really care about that. I kind of like that it's snug, but you can obviously also alt place this couch ever so slightly forward to get rid of that clipping. As you can see, it's fixed now for the most part. And then we could essentially just do the same here. Place another little end table behind here, and then we'll have some space for clutter. I'll move my plant with it. There's also a small gap behind here now, and one thing I also like to do a lot is to place tall standing lights sort of behind couches. I'm definitely not just using base game anymore at this point. I think I'm just going to use my favorite items, which one of them is this light. I just love placing these on a slight diagonal behind the couch so that it sort of looks like a reading light, maybe in that beige color. I know that's a lot of lamps, but you know, and we'll obviously clutter this up more later, but I do feel like the house could use some curtains. I really like these from Eco Lifestyle. We're using a lot of beige in this house, but I guess that's fine. Maybe we can use these. I'll also place them on these windows over here and then use the smaller ones over the smaller windows. This is definitely clipping, so you could decide to move this forward a little bit if you wanted to. I don't usually really mind the clipping of curtains with end tables. I don't know. Also, if you've watched my speed builds before, you'll probably know this, but one of my all-time favorite items in the game in general, but especially to fill up corners like this, is this hanging plant from the Blooming Rooms kit. I don't know what it is with this one, but it has my whole heart, and it just immediately looks so nice and filled in when you place it in an empty corner. Over here we have this really empty corner over here, which I don't really love. Maybe we can try to find a small cabinet to fill the space with, and I have just the thing in mind. I think it's from For Rent. No, actually, scratch that. It's from Growing Together. This one, yes. I love this cabinet. I think it's so cute and it's the perfect item to fill up corners with. We have a similar one in Eco Lifestyle, which is this one. That one also really works nicely. And there's a really cute corner version in Cats and Dogs, but that one's under decorations, so that's a little bit confusing sometimes. But that is this one, which is also really cute, but not really the vibe for this house. So there is that. Maybe we can put a nice, I was gonna say lamp, but maybe I like a plant better. This fiddle leaf fig from Cottage Living is also really, really cute and a really good space filler. And if we were to pretend that this is the front door of the house, let me actually just swap it out for a front door. Like this, I could copy over my curtains. I have a thing where I like to place curtains over the front door. I don't know what that is either. People like to point it out to me, but I think it looks cozy. And then we can just place some entryway clutter like this coat rack, a narrow little wall mirror over here. Maybe there's children in the house or people that go to school, so we could plunk a little school bag on the floor. We could even do some shoes right there. And then I think a welcome mat would be really cute. I think that one specifically maybe says Merry Christmas. I think this is sort of holiday themed. Oh, there we go. This is better. Another thing I like to do when I have double bookcases like this, I don't need them all to be accessible for gameplay purposes. So what I always think looks cute, especially with the new businesses and hobbies one, I like to place a small bench in front of it, maybe as a little reading nook, or maybe as a little step to like reach the top shelf or whatever. And I feel like the living room could maybe still use some extra items. So maybe we could do a little footstool here next to the coffee table. Maybe move the chair slightly backwards for some more routing space. I could go a little plant crazy in this room and maybe put this one by the chair. It adds a little bit of height in the back, which I think is what it needs. We do have some extra empty spaces here because I placed the couch away from the wall a little bit. And these types of areas, in my opinion, are the perfect areas to like stuff toys, especially when you're building a family home with a bunch of kids. It's pretty realistic to just have a bunch of toys or baskets with toys sort of put away, but like they're just behind the couch. And we have these really cute ones from base game, which are perfect for it. So we could like put this little basket of toys in the corner here, maybe another one right here next to that plant. Move everything over slightly. I feel like that's pretty realistic. We could even turn it into an extra cluttered, messy corner here by placing some of these sports equipment thingies. Maybe in this corner here is where they have some extra storage, just like so. A little box full of stuff, maybe some extra toys in the corner that are just kind of lost there. And I do feel like this wall behind the TV is the perfect spot for some extra wall shelves. So let's just keep it simple and maybe place a couple of these base game shelves on the wall and a matching swatch like this. And we'll clutter that up in a bit. Now let's get to cluttering up these surfaces. So let's say we want a nice row of books on this table. You can see that there's 3 slots and these base game books slot to it, but that's not really what you want it to look like. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pre-place some clutter on this table and then let's move it out of the way for now. Now we're gonna place these items sort of in the air, if you will. So we're gonna press down Alt and select these books and just sort of Alt place them back in the air where you think you want them to go. So I think this would be a pretty good spot. And then we can repeat that with the other ones and place them really close together so that it looks like one row of books, and maybe change the swatches of them so that it doesn't look too repetitive. My window is glitching. And then maybe we want to use these Love Struck ones as a bookend, so we can just sort of merge them together like that, and that looks really cute. Maybe we also want a bookend on the other side in the form of a really small plant. So I'll place this plant on the surface first so that it's at the right height, and then I'll place it behind the books and sort of rotate it if it wants to listen, and then we can place the surface back. Now if you're not happy with your placement, you can just remove the surface again, maybe move everything slightly over, which is what I I want to do. So let's place this all back and then let's put the surface back. And there we go. That looks perfect. Maybe we want some smaller clutter items. This mug is always a really good one from the Everyday Clutter Kit that usually already slots sort of nicely on its own. Maybe someone left their cap behind the couch here. Some baby wipes would be good. This you can see is slotting and like kind of merging with the books, which is not what we want. So let's get this out of the way again and I'll place it so that it sits right in front and then place the table back. And there you go, a fully cluttered end table. Then we can obviously do the same thing here. So we could put some boxes on this, maybe some books in the middle. Ooh, I really like this office decor thingy. But again, it's not really slotting how I want it to. So I'm gonna move this out of the way, place this back. And this is sort of like, you know, you're just gonna have to kind of try and see if you're getting it in the right place. It's a little bit of trial and error sometimes, but I don't think that's a bad thing. But I feel like I got it sort of right for this one. So yeah, that looks good. Now, ideally, I would also want to clutter up the bottom of this end table because that just looks a little bit, you know, empty. I would like to use these bins and place them on this lower shelf, but you can see that they're slotting to the top shelf. Something you can do is to just kind of place them on those slots anyway for the time being. And then we can use the Control-9 key to raise up these bins and then Alt place them right where we want them to go. We could place these next to it maybe. Again, just press Control-9 to raise them up slightly. If you go too far, you can see that right now they're floating. Just press Control-0 to go down one, and then you can Alt place them. Maybe we want this file box. So again, Control-9 to raise it up slightly, and then Alt place it however you want to put it. And then we can just very easily get rid of those boxes on top, and we're good to go. And now let's just repeat that again for the coffee table. So let's say we want some pictures. I kind of want two of these, but not the same height. So I'm just going to use my left bracket key to size this one down a little bit and place it right next to it. Choose a couple of fun swatches. Usually what I like to do is I like to collect the clutter items that I want to use, and then I'll sort of arrange them later. Sometimes I end up using too many items and I have to get rid of some, but it's nice to just have the items there for you. So I have a little collection of items, and again, we're just going to move the coffee table out of the way. It's kind of more difficult to guess where you want to Alt place the clutter for this one, because you have to kind of guess where the middle of the coffee table is going to go. Now, for this one, we have a rug that sort of tells you that this is going to be the middle of the coffee table, but it's still sort of difficult to guess. So what you can do to make things a little bit easier, you can obviously just guess, like plonk something, see if you placed it right, maybe adjust it. That's better. And then maybe you want to go from there and you can just kind of use the plant for reference. But also, if you happen to own the toddler stuff pack, there is this like pole thing under decorations that you can very easily use to just kind of merge with your table, and that would then be the middle of your coffee table. So you can very easily reference from there where the middle of your coffee table is going to go and sort of place your clutter around it like this, and then delete it again and you're good to go. I do feel like this TV is cute. I don't really want a massive one in this house, but it is a little bit too small than I would like it to be. Also, for some reason, I place it on the slot, but it's floating, but we can fix that. First, let's make it slightly bigger. If I were to size it up with my bracket key, it's way too big, so we're not going to do that. We're going to size it back down, and I'm going to show you just a little bit of Tool. So if you're familiar with Tool already, you know that you're just going to have to press Shift plus T to open up the tool extension. We're going to click once on the TV because that's the item that we want to size up, and you can tell that it sort of becomes green. We're going to scale it, so click scale, and then I only want to size it up ever so slightly. So I'm gonna say maybe 1.3, and then I'm pressing OK, and you can see that it's just ever so slightly sized up now. So I'm going to click it again to essentially deselect it. It's no longer giving that green overlay. I'm gonna press Shift plus T again to close out of the tool mod, and we have a slightly bigger TV now, but I also want to place it on an angle. So again, I'm gonna move the TV cabinet out of the way, grab the TV, hold down Alt, and just place it slightly on an angle and just more towards the side of the TV cabinet. And then I'm gonna place it back, and that's exactly what I wanted. Also, it's floating a little bit, which doesn't bother me too much, but I'll show you how to fix it again using the tool mod. Press Shift T T to open it up, click the TV to select it, and then we're going to elevate it. Elevate minus 0.02. We need a little bit more than that, so let's do that again. Minus 0.03. That looks about perfect. So let's click it to deselect, press Shift T to close out of tool, and that looks pretty much perfect to me. This will make your TV unreachable in the sense that when it breaks down in the game, your Sims can't reach to fix it, but you can always just go into build mode, slot it to the cabinet, and then have your Sims fix it, and then, you know, redo the placement after. Now let's clutter up these wall shelves. So I have a little selection of clutter items that I would like to use, and some of these items actually do slot to these shelves on their own, but not all of them. You can see that I'm trying to make these books go on that shelf, but it's not going. These ones aren't going. This one is going, so that is kind of helpful. I'm also getting the TV cabinet out of the way for now, just to make things a little bit more easier. But for the items that don't slot, we're gonna use our OMSP shelf. So let's alt place it on the wall to the exact height of these shelves, and we can just put our clutter on this shelf. So let's start with these books, for example. I'm slotting them to the shelf, and then I'm selecting them, holding down Alt, and freely placing them on the shelf. I think I want these other books to go over on this side, so I'm doing the same thing for these, holding down Alt, freely placing them on the shelf, and then I'm rearranging them a little bit to make it look like one row of books. And then I would love for this plant to go next to it, so holding down Alt and plonking it down. Now let's move our red shelf to the other one, but this stuff actually already slots to the shelf, so we don't even have to use the red shelf for this one. You can just slot it here, grab it, hold down Alt, and then this is a little bit tricky. You're gonna want to move your mouse down a little bit, somewhere around this area, and then you could still Alt place it. But to make things easier, you could also just use the red shelf. Let's size this one down using our left bracket. Hold down Alt, move your mouse down a little bit, otherwise it might slot to the shelves right here, and then place it down. And let's do the same thing for this little statue. There we go. Got rid of that shelf. Place your TV cabinet back, and that's it. I also love to place throw pillows on the couches. We have two versions in the game. This one is from the Modern Luxe kit, and this one is technically base game, but it was one of those gameplay reward items, so not everyone has it, I don't think. So what you can do is just raise them up using Control 9 and Alt rotate and place them in the couch where you want them to go. That is already cute, but the pillow is basically standing upright, which, you know, it's not too bothersome, but we can do something about it using the tool mod, which is exactly what we're gonna do. So press Shift T to open up the tool mod, select the pillow by clicking it so it gets that green overlay thingy, and then we're going to rotate. First of all, you're going to want to change the axis, and you can kind of see, it's a little difficult to see, but you can see that green circle around the pillow. We want to rotate it backwards, so this is not the right circle. So we're going to click change axis again. This is the right circle. You can see that it sort of like goes over the pillow like that. I am doing a terrible job explaining the axis. It's too much math for me, you know, I'm really bad at that. I'm sorry, but we can rotate it now. So we only want to rotate it ever so slightly backwards. The increment I use for this is -15, and click OK, and you can see that it moves backwards. Click it again to deselect, press Shift T to close out of tool, and then you can still just select it and Alt place it to exactly where you want it to go, and it will stay rotated. Now we have a nicely leaning little pillow in the couch, and we can just change the swatch for it if you want to. Something that's also cute is basically like using multiple pillows and then sizing them down. So we're going to size this one down using the left bracket, raise it using Control 9, angle it, and then we're doing that same thing where we're just slightly going to rotate it, -15. There we go, and then we can sort of place this pillow against the other one, just like so. Look how cute that looks. It's so much more cozy just like instantly. You can also just place all your pillows all at once and then rotate them all together. So press Shift T to open up the tool mod, then hold down Alt and click all your pillows one by one. Holding down Alt makes it so that you can select multiple items. So then we can rotate. The axis is already the right one, so then type in -15, and all the pillows rotate at once. Deselect your pillows, close out of tool, and then just alt place them however you want them to go, and that's it. We can also do something about this repeated clutter in the bookcases pretty easily. So you can see that I have my red shelf here. Let's set it to the lower shelf first. And by using these boxes, for example, oh, these do slot to those slots up there. So let's fill those up for now with those boxes. And then we can just freely fill up the other shelves. So let's place these on the red shelf and alt place them and freely rotate them and make them sort of like go over these books right here. You can change the color of them, and then they don't look identical anymore. It's also that little clock up there is very bothersome because that's just super unrealistic. So maybe we can fill that one up with this basket. It's a little too small, so maybe we can find something that fits a little better. Like this one maybe. That one's gigantic, but we could just size that down once maybe, and then place it over the clock. Oh yeah, that fits perfectly. A little bit more towards the front. Let's change the swatch to purple, and that looks kind of cute. And we can just get rid of these ones if we want to. I do think a little trailing plant would look really cute up there. Yeah, that's perfect. So it doesn't need much, and it doesn't look identical anymore. We can also clutter up this little bench right here if we want to. So just placing the red shelf sort of against the wall. I think that a little book stack from the Book Nook kit would be really cute up here. So let's see if I can find it. Ah, yes, right here, the pile. So let's slot that to the red shelf, and then we can just sort of place it on the bench like that, delete the red shelf, change the color maybe, and then that looks really cute. The trick with this taller stuff pole is especially useful for dining tables, I feel. You could just place it in the middle and then get rid of your dining table and then clutter it up. I'm obviously going to use the new stuff from the kitchen clutter kit for this. So let's say I want to use the cereal, sort of have it go near the middle of the table. Maybe we want some cookies, maybe this jar. Ooh, maybe they've been baking, so we can slot that to the table first, and then I'll place it here somewhere. This stuff does, I feel like, generally slot pretty well without needing to like freely all place it yourself. But you know, just for the sake of the tutorial, it's kind of cute. That looks really messy in a good way. I do think that this area right here is a little bare still, and I really like placing end tables in spaces like this. It's just a nice surface to go by the window, you know? That just fills it up nicely. And then again, you can obviously clutter this up. I would love to have a fish bowl in here, so I'm just gonna place a little fish bowl. And sometimes, you know, you don't even have to go out of your way and place all your clutter manually, of course. I'm sort of overdoing it in this video right now for the sake of showing you how to do it, but I do not do this in all my builds for every surface. I only do it when I feel like the build needs it, you know? This house already looks so lived in now, and the kitchen is definitely still kind of sad looking, so we gotta do something about that. And cluttering up the kitchen is generally pretty easy. I don't really ever have to use the red shelf or use tool or anything for that matter. So let's clutter up this area by the fridge a little bit. I am going to just slot my things to the counter, move it out of the way, and then I'll place it so that it goes exactly where I want it to go, just like that. One thing I always really like to do for my kitchens to make the fridge fit in a little bit more snuggly is slightly sizing it up using the tool mod. So we're going to open it up pressing Shift T, then clicking on the fridge to select it, and then scale it ever so slightly. I always use the same increment for this, which is 1.1. Click OK, and you can see how it sizes up just a little bit, and it fits in between these cabinets just a lot more snuggly that way, and I just really prefer that. I also love to clutter up the top of the fridge using my red shelf, so I'm just going to level that with the top of the fridge, and then maybe place, I don't know, some towels on top. I do merge it with the cabinet that goes over it, but it doesn't matter really. Maybe we could put this little bowl on top of the fridge. Yeah, that looks nice. Just a little bit of clutter. Now I do like to leave one counter free of decorations in my kitchens because otherwise it's too cluttered and there's no room for Sims to actually do cooking in the kitchen. And that can sometimes be a little problematic. By the way, a lot of these kitchen clutter items, for example, already slot in a pretty good way. So sometimes I won't even have to move the cabinets out of the way, and I can just place things down and then hold down Alt to still freely rotate them. But then they actually already look cute in their, I guess, natural slots. See, this one slots perfectly just right there next to the stove, so we don't have to do anything about it. We can also clutter up the top of the microwave. So let's use the OMSP shelf again, set it to the height of the microwave. And I love using this base game lunchbox for this purpose. So I'll grab that, slot it to the red shelf. We're going to have to move the cabinet with the microwave out of the way, and then I'll place this and sort of like guess where you want it to go. On top of microwaves, it usually takes me a couple of tries. Yeah, see, that's pretty all right, but it needs to move over a little bit more. So let's just do that and then place it back. Got rid of the shelf, and that's perfect. Maybe we can do a little row of cookbooks over here on the island counter like this. Let's leave this middle counter free of decorations so Sims can use that for cooking. And then let's just place a couple more items here and there. I love these groceries. I think that is so realistic. Some more cookies maybe. These items again just kind of slot perfectly on their own, but for the sake of this video, let's move the cabinet out of the way and place the groceries exactly where we want them to go, and then the same goes for these cookies. Place the counter back, and that's perfect. You can also alt place wall decorations, by the way, so we could just get these aprons, for example, and alt place them freely somewhere on the wall here. So I think that would be perfect, maybe in blue. And then for a final little decoration, maybe we can put some art on the wall right here. Maybe these cute frames. I love the colors of these. And again, you can just alt place them, and I think right there is perfect. And that's it. That's everything I do, all the tricks I guess that I use on a daily basis to make my builds look a little bit more cluttered. Obviously, again, there's multiple ways to do this, but I will say it looks really cozy. So I really hope that this was at least somewhat helpful. If you have any questions or suggestions for other tutorials, feel free to leave them in the comments. I would love to hear from you. But that's gonna do it for today's video. You can follow me on Instagram if you'd like. My username on there is SimmerySims. If you're not subscribed to my channel already, feel free to do so. And if you'd like to get notified every single time I upload, just click that little bell icon. I also live stream over on Twitch a few times a week, so if you're interested in that, go ahead and give me a follow over on twitch.tv/SimmerySims. So I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!